Oh, yay, yay, yay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is February 26th, which I think I say this every week. I cannot believe it's this date. March starts like in 5 days of 2020. And that is just amazing to me. So, especially when we start measuring it weekly with these Unique Genius in 33. So with that, welcome to Unique Genius in 33, to everybody who's watching this recording. And I cannot be, what do I want to say? It's exciting, but it's more than exciting because it's like having a girlfriend on, and you get to talk to them and interview with them at the same time. And it's Jo Self. I'm going to let her introduce herself here in a minute and her top 5. But Jo and I have now known each other, I want to say, well, let's see, 2016, so almost 4 years since we were introduced virtually and through Strengths, ironically. And Jo just had all these ideas, and I was in a different part of the world, and somehow we knew we'd end up doing some work together, and voila, we are. I do want to let everybody know, if you listen to our Alexa briefings or our iTunes, iPod, Strong Communities updates every day, Jo Self is actually the voice of those. And it's so awesome. I love listening to her every morning. So it's like I'm listening to this person who's normally in my Alexa. Oh, I better not say that because she's going to turn on. So those of you who don't know, we had the first world strengths-based Alexa briefing, and that's because Jo actually brought that idea to us. And because we don't, and we talk and we maximize, which is the theme we're going to be talking about today. We maximized that opportunity and jumped all over it. We have now close to 400 episodes, Jo, something like that. It's pretty close. Oops, you
close.
went.
Sorry, I muted myself and then thought I unmuted. No, I think if we're not over 400, we're really close.
Yeah, the numbers just add up so quickly. So getting to hear your lovely voice every morning just makes me happy. But Jo is the one who brought that to us, helped us create the content for it, and then actually executes it. So, and if you're not doing that, it's a skill on your phone or on your app for your Alexa. And I'm looking because my Alexa is over here in my office to my left. And now, though, you could also get it on iTunes and look for Strong Communities podcast. It's hooked up there as well. But today I get to interview her. So we are talking about the talent theme maximizer today. And I think you're all going to be, hopefully you'll feel like we maximized the time together and gave you what you need. And if you don't have this talent theme, it'll give you some insight to how these people think, execute, and what's going on in their head. So, and now here's the thing. I want to tell everybody really quick what Gallup's description is and definition of maximizer is. People exceptionally talented in the maximizer theme focus on strengths as a way to stimulate personal and group excellence. They seek to transform something strong into something superb. They take something from good to great. So with that, Jo, I'm going to hand it over to you. Tell everybody who you are, where you live, what you do for a living, and your top 5.
All right. Well, I am Jo Self, as you've said, and I just have to say that is my real name. It's not a pen name. It's not a made up name. It is actually my name. It's on my birth certificate. I get that question all the time. I am living in Lima, Peru. I'm originally from the US. I was born in Michigan, raised in Kentucky, spent most of my life in Kentucky, but moved around the States a bit. And I've now been in Peru as of April 1st. It will be 9 years. I cannot believe I've been in South America for over 9 years and Peru for almost 9. And I'm actually a Peruvian citizen now. So I'm here for the long haul. I certified as a Gallup coach in Spanish. So I'm actually a bilingual coach and one of the first coaches that certified in Spanish. We had some Spanish coaches before that, but they had all certified in English. And I'm super excited that I've been able to be a part of Strong Communities. As Sherry said, we knew each other through Strengths, and it was my maximizer that actually took me to her through some questions I had that were going on at the time. And
we'll talk about that a little bit because I remember what I was thinking.
Yeah, it was my maximizer that took me to Sherry, actually. So it's funny that this is the talent we're talking about. But I just knew, I kept telling her, like, keep me on your short list. Whenever you do something, keep me on your short list. I know we've got to work together, because I just loved your energy and what you were bringing to the table. And I knew that we had a lot of alignment. So I'm super grateful to be a part of the community. And my top 5 are strategic, activator, maximizer, communication, and ideation.
So strategic, activator, maximizer,
communication,
communication,
ideation.
and ideation. Wow. Powerhouse of bringing ideas and things and taking it out into the world.
You know,
like
I do communication strategy and business strategy, right? Like, I
Yeah.
can't help myself. That's just what I do.
That's hilarious. Well, I love it. And man, and it is funny, because when you get to speak with people like this, as people, like, I love interviewing people I've never met before, and they've just taken the assessment, because they have all this excitement and this energy around, and what about this? And they start asking you questions. And so then the interview gets reversed. And there's a blessing in that. But I will tell you, there's also, on the opposite spectrum, a blessing to be able to speak with somebody who understands the strengths language, which will help some of our members who aren't as entrenched into the education of strengths, and this is going to help them. But then hopefully they can just see the joy that it brings to friends when we talk about something, and we get to talk about ourselves in such a positive, constructive manner, without ego and without comparing, and just, hey, this is who I am. So there's a blessing on that as well. And I hope if those of you who are watching this are not, or just diving into this whole strengths world and this language and this way of being and learning, that if anything, you pick up on the joy, hopefully, that we both will show you and go, wow, this can change my life. And that's ultimately what I want everybody to, I want them to learn about the strength. I want them to see that when you can just be in who you are and be in the presence of other people who may not be exactly like you. However, we do share a couple there, or one anyway, and it's our number one, that it allows you to accept people for who they are, and just enjoy them. So side benefit of all of this. So yay. All right, girlfriend. Well, then let's go here. Now, with the questions we always ask, right? So the first one is, we want to start in a constructive mode. What do you love most about the Talent Theme Maximizer?
I love my maximizer. My maximizer is, we think of it in terms of excellence. A lot of people think of it as the perfectionist talent. And I would say I'm actually probably the furthest thing from a perfectionist on some level. Now, that's probably me being a little graceful with myself and some lessons I've had. But my maximizer is really much more people focused. For some people, it might actually look a little bit more on its own. It's very people focused. So it's really about the potential other people have. I really see excellence in others, and I want to help them develop it. To some people, it could look like developer, but it's not.
I can see that too. And just so I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to let everybody know too, and this will be a learning. Maximizer is an influencing theme. So there's 4 buckets, right? 4 domains that they all 34 of them fall into. So it's interesting that you say people, and I want to point that out to everybody, because maximizer is a way of action. Yeah, it's taking things from good to great, but it's an influencing theme. So it doesn't surprise me that you're talking about people in your and why you love it. So sorry for the interruption.
No, that's okay. But it is, because I think a lot of people think of maximizer in terms of processes or, a certain discipline factor, and mine just doesn't show up that way. And for some people it does, depending on their other talents, right? And it could be making things better for others through processes. But for me, it really is about the people and seeing potential in people, and just having that innate sense of, oh my God, there's something amazing about you, and then helping them make that shine. Mm-hmm. That's what really gets me going.
Love it. Love it. And it follows and this year, we're talking about the dynamics a little bit, and because it follows your strategic thinking, your strategic and activator. So you've already come up with a plan. You're ready to go. And so I can imagine, yeah, it's about, you see that potential. Hey, I know what's going on. Trust me. Let me help you.
Huge learning. We're probably going to, I know through the questions, we'll probably come into this, but just because you said it right there, I want to say, I did not realize my maximizer is what cost me most of my relationships. So before I got married, and maybe not that I'm getting divorced, but all of my early relationships and boyfriends, a lot of times, I didn't realize I was doing it. People feel that I'm setting expectations for them when really all I'm seeing is what is possible. I also have futuristic down there. So, and I see it so clearly, and I want people to be so happy and do what they are best at doing, that my passion comes across as setting expectations. And so a lot of my exes, when we would break up, they would say, I don't want to disappoint you. And I feel like I'll never live up to your expectations. And I was like, but I don't have expectations. I asked you what would make you happy. If you could do anything you wanted to do,
It
what
probably
would you do?
felt like you didn't even like them the way they
my
were.
activator was already like putting the plan out for them. Here's your options. This is how we can do it. How can I support you? But they weren't ready. And so what I was trying to do as a cheerleader felt like pressure to them. And so that's something I've actually had to learn to manage my enthusiasm until someone is ready to take those steps.
Yeah. And I can imagine they probably felt like, or they questioned, do you even like them? Because if you're always making them better and trying to make them better, it's like, do you even like me the way I am?
I got a lot of thank yous, and I got a lot of thank yous because they often married the girl right after me, and I taught them a lot about how to have a great relationship and how to be in a relationship. So they learned a lot from me. I got lots of thank you letters, surprisingly enough, but I was also always told that they felt that they would disappoint me at some point. And that was an interesting wake up call when I, really learned about my maximizer and everything. I was like, oh, that's how
Isn't that interesting? Because I think you're right. The biggest misconception with maximizer is people think it's about processes and things. And and even people with maximizer take pride in that. And it's usually, there's a lot of focusing on people there and what people should be doing and employees should be doing, and they should be doing better. But you mean it with love. The intention
because you see
good.
The possibility. Because you see the possibility. It's not because you feel this. Most of the time, I think if it's in its best form, it's not because you're trying to pressure them to do something better. You think you could do it better. Which, let's be honest, if you're in a micromanager situation, it could show up that way. But generally, it's the best of intentions of just knowing what could be and seeing the possibility and wanting someone else to be able to bring that to light. But it can come across as a set of expectations, which it's from my heart is not meant to be. So that's something I've learned to temper.
Powerful. So then so on that note, then what drives you crazy about the maximizer thing?
I call it the devil on my shoulder. Whenever I'm having a stress moment, I'm always like, somebody talk me off the maximizer ledge. It's always my maximizer ledge that someone needs to talk me off of. And it's funny because, I've done a lot of training of other coaches through what my work has been. And I mentioned that because I trained someone when I was doing some parenting modules, and she set up this amazing brand and she had this amazing concept, all things I helped her with.
Right.
But I had been looking at possibly working in the parenting space a little bit. I thought, well, she's doing such a great job. Why should I even bother?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, and right? Because it's a return on investment, ROI. So I've realized that my maximizer is what causes me to switch lanes. Because when I see,
that's huge.
When I see someone doing something really well, I think this is a waste of my energy. I don't need to be in
that. Sounds a little bit like competition.
Well, and this is where I think maximizer and competition can also get confused, because maximizer can look like competition because there's a comparison, but it's not saying, oh my God, I'm not as good as that person, or I need to measure up to that person. It's, oh, you've already nailed this. And maximizer is going from good to great. It's improving something. Well, if there's nothing to improve, why am I spending my time here?
See, and competition is I just want to win. Okay.
Right. And my activator, I think, influences that too. Right. Because it's very, so I think there's, a big piece of that, like, you've already dominated the space. Why why do I need to be there? So it's one of the things that I work on with people and myself, to recognize that that's fine that other people are doing it. You're still going to do it your way.
Yeah.
So don't do that. But that's where my maximizer ledge can kind of
drive you
nuts
crazy a
occasionally.
little bit.
Yeah.
Joe, well, we always talk about, as you know, we believe you're born with these. And as you grow up, they're either raw or refined, or we mix them up a little bit. But because if it was just truly nature, our siblings would have the same top 5 as us, because we grew up in the same house with the same parents. And that's not the case. So now, and the strengths language, but with knowing everything when you look back, what's your earliest memory of knowing? Well, now you look back and go, oh, that was my maximizer talent.
Like,
what's your earliest memory of using it going, now that that you have had it your whole life?
Just thinking about this, I think I was a kid who was never really a kid. Mm-hmm. I was always drawn to adults. I always wanted to be around adults, learn things from adults, be friends with adults. I was often teacher's pet, but not because I had the best grades, mm-hmm. but because I wanted to be close and learning and shadowing and growing. And I always had experiences that were a little beyond what my peers were. My mother passed away when I was very young. Mm-hmm. My parents had divorced. I went through an illness with my mom. So there were a lot of things that a lot of kids didn't understand that adults did. So I found a lot of companionship in adults, and there was a tendency for me to people please through it too. And I do think, as I'm thinking about it, I do think a lot of that was my maximizer, because I wanted to be the best. I wanted you to notice how special I was. I wanted you to see that I was up to your level, right? And that I could be a peer and not just.
Did your parents handle that well with you?
My dad did. My dad did.
Because that could come across a little bit as needy as a child. And I think there's parents out there that may have children who have maximizer and they're misreading. And I know we didn't discuss this, but I trust you to go with, it just feels like this is something we should talk about. I think there's parents out there that might have children who seem needy and need to be recognized. And they might be harsh, like, no, just go do it. They might be doing the exact opposite thing of what they need, thinking they're being a good parent. What can you tell some of those parents who have children who may have maximizer?
I think for me, I was really lucky. I was really good at playing by myself. So my parents owned a business. I was often spending time in their shop. They had a Lazy Boy showcase store. And so I was often in there by myself. And so I was kind of surrounded by adults too. It's just what I had to do. I think they set really good expectations for behavior. And I think there was always this bar. And so it was important for me to reach that bar. Okay. So I think setting appropriate bars, setting appropriate expectations that is potentially even a little bit out of reach or feels a little bit above maybe where they should be, just to see how the child responds, because then that's how you're going to get a difference between maybe achiever and maximizer. Because an achiever may not try if they think they're going to fail, but a maximizer will be inspired to try a little harder and to go up to that expectation. So I think you can do that. As a teenager, one of the things my dad did with me is he trusted me to make the right decision for myself. But it's not like he just let me make my own decision. It was when there was a big decision to be made, which probably honed my strategic as well. When there was a big decision to be made, starting when I was 11, 12 years old, we sat down. He wrote a pros and cons list around what his decision was. I wrote a pros and cons list around what my decision was and what I wanted to do. And then we sat down together and compared notes. And if he felt like I really understood the consequences of what my decision was going to be, if I understood the ramifications, if I really knew what I was getting into, he usually let me make my decision. But always had a really thorough discussion.
I think what you're saying there too is that I think the key from what I'm hearing is set a stretch goal because they need it, not out of your own neediness to push your child.
Yeah.
But, and it's about them and not using it or manipulating it as a parent, because a lot of parents are going to hear this and they're going to say, I don't do this. And I think most parents, want what's best for their children. But what we want for them creeps in, and without even knowing. And I think if your child has maximizer, you could manipulate it a little bit, thinking you're doing the right thing for them.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Yeah.
that recognizing and having that awareness of that bar and how high is it, and is it too high? Okay,
And
got it. Thank you.
Not oversetting expectations, but maybe just a little bit higher and seeing how they respond to it, right? That's the goal, is to see how they respond. Because it may feel like maximizer and it may not. And I don't know that I was needy. I like to learn. Like, I craved knowledge, but my way of getting knowledge has always been through people, not through books. It's always been through experiences and not through books.
Yeah.
So that was just my makeup, but I'm, 5 and influencing. So shock there.
So let me ask you this. Rather than ask how it plays well with the other strengths, we'll talk about that, but which strength does it rub up against? So like my achiever and my learner can rub up against each other, right? Because my achiever wants to get it done and my learner is like, no, I want to learn more. So then they write like, I have to, and I think I've gotten it down. Is there one theme in your top 5 that that you sometimes you could tell that there's friction between it?
I think it's a double-edged sword. Is my maximizer with my strategic, maybe my communication a little bit too. I mean, it's in there because my maximizer, I think it's why I can be very difficult to coach. I think it's why I've not usually enjoyed therapy. I think my activator gets in there. Honestly, I think it's a little bit of a combination, but I don't like being condescended to. I don't like being talked down to. You talk down to me, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, because strategic is they already have thought it through.
We thought of 1,700 options, and I have ideation as well. So if you think I haven't considered it.
Yeah, so then your maximizer is, and I've maximized those thoughts and everything.
And I've picked the best possible solution, or narrowed it down to the 3 best possible solutions I think will work. So like, I've done the internal work. Now, if you can come up with something new and surprise me, by all means, right? Like, but it's all in how you present it as well. But
so if somebody says, it comes to you and says, no, this is the way it is, you're going to be like, okay, see ya.
I'll tell you right now, 6 months, I'll tell you, perfect work situation. I had a boss who, for the first 6 months I was on the job, my job was very creative. I was employee programs manager. I had to create a lot of events, a lot of different things. It was very creative. My strategic, my ideation was super excited. My maximizer would be like, oh, let's make this the best possible. And I would write the objective, logistics, et cetera, et cetera. I'd write it out, I'd pour my heart into it. And I'd walk into his office for our one-on-ones, and he'd look at the paper, read it over, and go, flip, put an X over the whole thing, flip it over, and then tell me what I was going to do. We went through this for 6 months. And one day I just lost it. I just started crying, and I walked out of the office crying, and his admin looked at me and she said, how long have you been with us? And I said, 6 months. And she said, yeah, that's about right. And I mean, he had a reputation for being incredibly difficult to work with. Now, at that point, I already knew strengths, and I had just recently taken the disc. So when I called,
so you were on fire for the language too.
So I took a moment. I calmed down. The next day I went back to him, and I walked into his office and I said, look, I know you've taken your strengths. I've also got a disc assessment. I would like you to take the disc assessment. I got it at my conference. Please take this. We need to have a one-on-one and figure out how we're going to work together, because otherwise I know this is the perfect job for me, but this is not the perfect environment. And unless you and I figure out how to work well together, I'm going to have to quit. I don't have anything to lose. I don't have kids. I don't have any, like the rest of your team does. And I said, and I know you have a reputation for being difficult to work with, but I am not going to fall into that. I want to make this a great relationship. Hi, Maximizer wants to make the most of this, right? Like, I'm not going to let it go.
Yeah, you played you really well.
And and he said, okay. And so he took the assessments and he took the strengths, and we met a week later and we compared notes, and we realized what I was doing is my futuristic was getting in there. So I was creating this event, the big event, the best. And his analytical and strategic was back down here at baby steps. Start here, then grow to here, then grow to here. So he wasn't actually saying no to my idea. He was showing me how to grow to my idea, but he wasn't communicating that.
Well, and that's the danger with strategic. So strategic, we already have the answer. And as my business partner, Lori says, is we don't leave breadcrumbs. So, and if he had experience and he's the boss, when you have that title and that power and you have strategic, you're just going to say, no, here's what we're going to do. And you don't want to waste time. And so you
Yeah.
can.
Well, he was super busy. Like it was all understood.
Yeah, so it makes sense. And I'm so
But once
glad.
we
That's a
realized
great example.
that I work from here in and he works from here out. And once we realized that and figured it out,
yeah,
I became his confidant. He became my mentor. We still talk to this day. And I haven't been at that company since 2007.
yeah.
So I completely turned around the relationship because I was willing to invest and I knew that there was potential there, but it just was not working the way it was working.
Well, then you use it to your advantage. Now, do you see, well, let me ask you this. What do you wish other people knew about the maximize your strengths? Like, what's a misconception?
We're not all perfectionists.
Mm.
I think most people think maximizers are perfectionists. We're not all perfectionists. I am definitely not a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
I think even especially when it comes to people, I have my little things, but generally I would never consider myself a perfectionist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of maximizers out there that talk about how they'll go back and re-edit and re-edit and re-edit and redo and redo and redo. I feel like that's a really big basement part of maximizer, because once I've put my best effort forward and I've done it, I'm done. Right. Now that might be my activator influencing and going, we made it the best we could. We're done. If somebody wants to make it better, great, in your hands, but I'm out.
Yeah. So for you, that's how it shows up.
So for me, that's how it shows up. And we might be tough at getting feedback, especially if it's given the wrong way. Because even in my report, it says you likely will not focus on what your weaknesses are, but will automatically focus on what you do well. And you don't like spending time or energy in the weakness area. And I think that's probably true of most maximizers. It might come through because I also have command in my top 10. So there's probably a little bit of that influencing that, but I really, and positivity, I don't want to focus on what's wrong. Okay, this didn't work. I acknowledge it. What can we do right? How do we fix it? How do we move on?
And that's character and values. And I think people mix up character and values when they describe their strengths and how they come out. I love this. Thank you for sharing that, because I do, that maximizing, you might set your own bar of excellence, but you don't want other people pointing out your weaknesses because you don't see that as maximizing. You see that as just condescending, or
like, it's okay. Let me know that something didn't work, or let me know that that my behavior could be like, I don't mind feedback, but it really is how it's given and why it's given. If it feels pointless and isn't moving us forward,
or out of control or power. Yeah.
Like I really don't understand it. And if there's a way to focus it, right, it's a very strengths-based focus. Like, okay, but what is working and how can we make that better?
I love it. Thank you for sharing that, because I think there's going to be some people that listen to this and are going to go, okay, that makes so much sense. They work with people who have maximizer and are just like, hey, we need to do this different, and it's taken wrong. So thank you for that.
And I want to share one other thing really quickly, because I think as an influencing talent, now granted, I have 5 in my top 10 of influencing talents. Okay. But I think this can show up especially with maximizer in particular, and maybe self-assurance and command. So I think it's something we maybe share in common as an influencer. We often speak with a lot of confidence that makes people think we're right, or makes them think we think we're right. Yeah. And the thing is we actually welcome feedback and dialogue, and you don't have to agree with us. I'm not actually right. I just am passionate and speak really,
Now, once I make a decision, I'm pretty much right. And here's why, because my self-assurance is an influencing theme. I would never influence you to do something that I don't believe in or have thought through, made a plan, learned about. See, so for me, it's also a values issue and a character issue. My self-assurance is because I speak with authority, not just because I've thought it through and all that, and it doesn't mean I'm always right, but I would never share it with you or encourage you to do it unless I totally have thought through it and done it myself consistently.
Right. I'm very much the same way. I'm very much the same way too. But that's the thing is it my dad, even when I was younger, this is another way this would come through often, is my dad traveled a lot. And so I was home taking care of myself. And so he'd get home on Friday and I'm in high school and he'd go, so what do you, and I'd say, oh, well, hey dad, I'm going out tonight with, my friends. We're going to go to a movie and we're going to do this. And I'll be home at 11:30. He's like, would you like to phrase that in the form of a question? And my thought was always, why?
Yeah.
You're my dad. If you don't want me to do that, you're going to tell me you don't want me to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I just assume people are going to come back at me if they don't agree.
Yeah.
What I have learned is people do not come back
They
at
don't
you.
do, I've learned that too. See, and
I
I think that it is influencing. You're right. That, and what that means,
Yeah.
folks, is maximizer and self-assurance, what she's referring to with myself. It's an influencing theme. And I think that's because, well, we're willing to. Why wouldn't other people?
Right.
They don't.
It's a blind spot of our
And yet if
talent
they
that we
do
just
and they
assume
do it
that we're doing.
wrong, right? Like, yeah.
Well, then we're coming down on them.
Yeah, we're complicated individuals.
Fine.
It's a razor's edge. Well, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I was thinking about when you said your dad. I can remember when my kids are a year apart. Now they're 29, 30, and 31. But I can remember when we went to the grocery store one time, and my oldest daughter, she didn't ask me if we wanted to get ice cream. She said, Mom, do you want the chocolate bars or do you want the vanilla ones? I was like, that's very clever. It wasn't a yes, no question. Ultimate salesperson and influeing, right? Like, she didn't leave me an option to say no.
Right.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, here, this time has went by so fast. So
I know.
Let me ask you this. What do you wish people knew about strengths that maybe are just, why should they continue on this strengths journey if they're new to it? Because as you know, in strong communities, a lot of our members are just getting exposed to it. Why should they continue on with this? And why, if they are part of a company or organization or community, why strengths?
So for me, I have boiled it down to this definition.
Okay.
I believe that strengths is the shortcut glossary into the human psyche that allows for better relationships through better communication and greater compassion.
Oh, okay.
That's what it is for me.
We're going to use that on talking about, you said communication, helping the messaging. That is beautiful.
And it is, for me, it has always been about the language. Now, granted, I have communication as well, but for me, when I first discovered my strengths in 2003, it was literally like I got a user's manual for myself. And it wasn't that I learned something new that I didn't know.
Right.
But it gave me confirmation and it gave me the words to explain the why behind that to other people that I had always lacked. Because I think our biggest blind spot is what we do well.
Right.
Self-reflection is never going to help us see what we do well. We need a baseline. And for me, strengths gives us that baseline to finally recognize that something we're doing is actually special, is actually different. And that difference is an advantage. And especially when you're in a team environment, in a business environment, in a leadership environment, we need to know who we are and the path we're walking so that we can lead appropriately, work together appropriately, recognize those differences as a benefit and not a flaw. And that harmony, that's why I say greater compassion, because once you can see yourself objectively, you see others objectively. You have quirks, you have triggers, and you recognize it through your strengths. And so you go, oh, they have responsibility. Oh, this is going to trigger them. Oh, maybe they don't like that. You start to have greater compassion. And so you enter into conversations with less negativity and criticism and more need to understand and find common ground. And that's honestly what makes me go, I want to teach strengths as a second language. I want everyone to speak it. That is my greatest vision.
Beautiful. I loved that. Well, Joe, we went a minute over, so that's all right. So no, it's my fault. You you got me talking about it. So this has been fabulous. I think maybe we should set up one for the end of the year and talk about one of your other strengths. I think our members would enjoy hearing from you in that aspect as well. So thank you for taking the time out to be the interviewee and being here. And I can't wait to work with you some more. And Joe is just starting a new program about communication. Look her up on LinkedIn. It's J-O and then S-E-L-F. She's got she's got it out there on Facebook, and look into her newest program around communication and your story, because it would not be a bad thing to invest in. So
thank you.
well,
thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you. And we will talk soon. Bye, girlfriend.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.